Thank you, Doc, for agreeing to do the Agile Core with us. As we were talking, I said that we really would like some scar tissue. Some war stories about this. What works, what doesn't work, horrifying tales, from the battlefields.
Yeah.
Do you have a few?
I do. So I was hired last year to manage an Agile team. And all I knew is that going into it, they told me it was a little bit dysfunctional and that there was one person that everybody would point to and say, this is the guy that's the cause of all our problems. So I joined the company. I was there for a week. They did an iteration planning meeting, an hour-and-a-half meeting that lasted 4 hours. And I was beginning to detect a little bit of tension. And this is actually how I got my nickname, Doc, from this team. So the first thing that really came up is in my second week, we had another hour-and-a-half iteration planning meeting that was going on. It was about 2.5, 3 hours. And I had two guys on the team, and this is really the first lesson for me. Two guys on the team who were both very strong, had very strong views of what Agile is and how you do it. And while one was the titular technical lead and architect, and the other was the QA architect, there was a little bit of contention as to who should really be calling certain kinds of shots. The QA architect was serving as Scrum Master. And so here we are 2 or 3 hours into this iteration planning meeting, this hour-and-a-half iteration planning meeting, and they're yelling at each other, and they're calling each other names, and one is shaking his finger in the other's face, and another guy has stomped out of the room in frustration and upset. And I let it go on for a while, and then I said, okay, guys, we have to actually learn how to behave respectfully. I don't care if you like each other. I don't care if you actually respect each other, but for me, one of the key issues and one of the reasons I was hired there was you got to deal with your colleagues as colleagues no matter what. You got to behave with respect. You got to learn how to communicate. There's relationships going on here. And one of the guys then gave me the nickname Doc as a play on Dr. Phil, sort of. That situation with the two strong personalities, one of whom was supposedly the lead and architect and was doing that job, but nonetheless was being challenged constantly by the other, that went on for 6 months. And no matter what I tried, and I talked to them individually, and I talked to them together, and we studied Crucial Confrontations, the book, as a book study with the whole team. So I was doing all sorts of things. Sure, I gave it every shot I had.
And it wasn't being effective?
It would have little blips of effectiveness, and then their core personalities would emerge again. The core situation would reoccur. It finally came to a head in about 6 months after I started all of this, when I was out of town at a conference, and the team blew up. The guy that I mentioned at the beginning, who everybody pointed to as the problem, was still very strong ideas, very strong opinions, trying to impose them, not very good at that point at teaching, mentoring, tutoring, which is critical. The architect, the lead, has to be able to draw out the members of the team.
Is that vital to leadership?
I believe so.
Agile teams, do they demand more leadership than traditional projects?
I don't think they demand more. I think the role of leader manifests differently. So for me, the key skills of leadership are about communication, openness, reflection, and eagerness, if not willingness, eagerness to evolve and change. So the nature of Agile, to me, is about the nature of personal evolution also, which is continuous improvement, right, and flexibility, adaptability. So if a leader is not willing and able to get the lessons from what's happening with the team and apply them to themselves, because the first question always has to be not what's the team doing wrong, but what have I done or not done that has allowed this to happen.
Right.
Okay, so that reflective question, if that's not there, then there's no leader. Right? And a leader will emerge. And so on my team, what was happening is other people's leadership was coming out because the team, instead of turning to their designated leader, were turning to someone else. And it wasn't me, because I was the manager, but rather the QA architect that I mentioned. And so he took on himself to be the champion for the rest of the team, in the process aggravating the situation because he also was not behaving in what I think of as an appropriately leader fashion.
So now we have 3 personalities.
No, 2. It's still the same 2. And the team, which has its own personality. So we can't ignore the fact that the team has an identity and is an organism, right? So here's this team which is in pain, right? And there's 2 parts of the team that are like this. So as I said, I was away at a conference, and that QA architect helped to bring everything to a head. So I was gone, and so was the tech lead, the architect. He and I were both at the same conference. QA architect says, you know, everything's going to hell. We need to do something about this. So I get back to find the whole team is up in arms, and I have to have individual conversations with each of them. Not painful, but I mean, for me, it was just that's what you do. And they each said him, pointing at the tech lead. At which point I had to say, okay, he can't be tech lead anymore because he's not leading. He's creating dysfunctionality on the team. He has, by virtue of the way he has behaved, doesn't matter if he's right or wrong, but by virtue of the way he's behaved, he has caused the team to be almost non-productive. Now, is he right about how we should do Agile or how we should write code or design patterns or anything else, or is he wrong? At that point, for me, becomes totally irrelevant because the team is broken. I can either fire the rest of the team and start over, which is not usually an option, or I can separate him, which is what I did. So to cut short the end of the story, the owner of the company ultimately dumped us all. The whole team, myself, everybody on the team, gone.
Did the team eventually recover in any way?
They did. Once I separated the tech lead from the team, they kind of went, ooh, we can actually have a conversation without somebody drawing us into a rat hole about the right way to do things, the wrong way to do things. We can talk about a technical issue and have a productive conversation. And they started to enjoy what they were doing. So in fact, over the next couple of months, the team became highly productive, happy. Unfortunately, the owner of the company was so frustrated by then because this
Too late.
Too late. Yeah. Too little, too late. Yeah. Because this had been going on 9 months to a year before I got there.
Right. Thank you so much for being in the Agile Story Corps. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.